Hey, Encino! Looking for low prices on grocery favorites? Find them at your refreshed Amazon Fresh grocery store. Whether you're picking up this week's grocery haul or today's hot lunch, Amazon Fresh is your spot to save big. Head to amazon.com/grocery store opening for info on upcoming store events, this week's deals, and more. Find savings as far as the aisle can see at your refreshed Amazon Fresh in Encino on Ventura Boulevard.
Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio.
Live from Los Angeles, the Win Without Competing show with Dr. Arlene Barrow, host and creator of the Right Fit Method, the key to professional and personal success. Now, let's join Dr. Arlene.
Thank you, Virgil. This is a special edition of Win Without Competing, in which I interview a select group of leaders on the move. The goal is to peek behind the person's accomplishments and create a snapshot of their essence. My guest today is Stephen Snyder, a financial solutions professional with an MBA in business processes, who lived and worked in Norway and Egypt. Welcome, Steve, to Win Without Competing.
Thank you, Dr. Arlene, for inviting me to be on the program.
It's my pleasure. Tell us, where did you grow up and what did your parents do?
I grew up in several small towns in Kansas, agriculture communities, all very small. And the values of that era has really impacted my life.
What did your parents do for a living? I know your dad had an interesting mixture in his career.
Yes, Dad started out as a music director and then later on became a full-time high school guidance counselor. Actually, it was a small town. He was a counselor for the whole school system. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom for several years, but as us kids got into our junior high years, she also became in education and became a teacher aide to students.
But your dad did something else. He was musically talented, correct?
Yes, very much so. He loved music.
But he also did something with the music in terms of his profession, correct?
Well, yes, he was. Well, let me back up. He grew up as an only child, so he really wanted to be with children and impact their lives and help them grow. So as a music director, he had the one-on-one relationship with them, but he's also networked with the universities around Kansas and outside Kansas, and was able to take his band members onto the university situation and interact with university students and professors and so forth. So via his music, his love for music, he made an impact on his students in that way.
What kind of values did your parents instill in you as a child?
Strong values of self-worth, of keeping your word, of knowing what you were going to do and then do it. Be open, out, and do what you can to impact the lives around you. We don't live in our own little world. We live in a world with many other people. So get along and take care of them and take care of yourself.
It sounds like your dad taught you as a child to be a member of a team. I know you had two brothers.
Yes, two brothers and a sister as well. Yes. Dad was very good at networking, again, in the university environment, but with other band directors in the area, and he actually was a leader in the music community within Kansas. And as a guidance counselor, he then became a leader in introducing computers into the school systems. And even though he was a counselor of a very small school, it actually was one of the leaders in the state in bringing computers into the system and getting students online.
Did you work with computers as a child?
Not so much. That computers really came after I got out of high school. The Navy had them somewhat, but really my first use of computers was after joining Amoco after college.
When we spoke prior to the show, you told me that you were an avid reader who liked sports. You also spent a lot of time building model railroads.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
That is an interesting story. My mom and dad received a wedding gift upon their marriage of an HO scale model engine, which is kind of a unique gift for a wedding. Nevertheless, as each one of us boys turned 8 years old, Dad bought a starter model railroad kit and integrated it with his own. So one of my fond memories in that regard is on Sunday afternoons going to an outbuilding behind the house that was heated, and we would build these big, model railroad layouts. We'd spend 2 or 3 weekends building this thing, and then we'd run the trains for a while, and then we'd tear it down and build something better and bigger.
It sounds like he taught you at an early age to set the standard higher and higher, raise the bar higher and higher.
Oh, very much. Both with the railroads, again, let's tear it down and make it bigger. Let's make a bigger mountain or more streams or whatever. But I saw that in his job as well as a band director, always striving for his band to be number one when we go to state musical festivals, to be number one, to be a leader, to do some things different. So that pervaded his career, his attitude, and that frankly rubbed off on us as well.
Well, I think when you decided to build your own house and your grandfather didn't really think this was the right fit for you, you decided to show him that you could do it. Am I correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Grandpa actually was, as all of my grandparents and parents, were very supportive of trying new things and helping us to be successful. But building a house, that was kind of a far stretch for my grandfather, and who was a career plumber, so he had a real insight into what it takes to build. But frankly, I took that as a challenge, knowing that ultimately he would help me, which he did. And indeed, I contracted out for the things I couldn't do, like put the foundation down. But after that, I did the plumbing, wiring, walls, sheetrock. I did the whole thing, and I was motivated to do that. In that I was in college at the time and not real happy with the living situation. I was married with a child, and things just needed to be better. And that was an opportunity, and I took it.
How did you feel when you looked at the house and said, "I did it"?
Oh, it was great. My first experience with building was with my dad. We had a growing family and needed more bedrooms, so he just same thing. He said, "I need this. I'm going to do it." And we built 3 bedrooms and a family room in the basement. And that was a good feeling of accomplishment, which I then took forward. So when I built my house, when the carpeting finally went down, and I said, "I'm done," it was great. It was a long project, pretty complex, but I did it. It was done, and I sat back and enjoyed it.
I think that you feel that same pride in a work environment in which you meticulously get a project done and then say, "I've done it, it's done."
Oh, very much so. I like being able to see my impact on the organization. And even in a large organization, you can see your impact. You heard this thing, small fish in a big pond and so forth, but I don't necessarily believe in that. In your sphere of influence, you can make a significant impact.
I agree with you. You mentioned the Navy earlier. Tell us, why did you join the Navy and why submarines?
Submarines. Yeah. The Navy was really a logical decision. Coming out of high school, my parents, as mentioned, were school teachers, and there just wasn't a lot of money for college, and And the Navy at that time had a real good program of in the nuclear power program of 2 years of schooling and 4 years of active duty, after which my plan was to join the civilian power industry. That would be a very plausible career for opportunities for advancements and challenges and so forth. However, as plans happen, the 1973-74 Three Mile Island incident pretty much killed nuclear power in the U.S., but I was in the military at that time, and so I had to make other plans, which I did. Now, submarines, that was a different decision. Sort of number one on that is submarines don't get a lot of notoriety, but they actually are the first insertion of force by the government into troubled areas. And submarines go in, clean it out, make sure that the situation is safe for the public show of power to show up, that is aircraft carriers and all their support ships. So I like being out in the front of things. And then second, the culture of submarines is different than the standard military of what you see in the military and so in the movies and so forth of saluting and high deference to officers and so forth. But in the submarines, it's very much a team atmosphere. The officers and enlisted together are responsible for making sure the goal of the mission is achieved, and they learn to work together in a very cohesive fashion, and that was very attractive to me as well.
But then one day, what did you see in the water unexpectedly?
Torpedoes in the water. That actually is an announcement over the PA system that you do not want to hear if you have not been shooting torpedoes. So, torpedo in the water, that gets your attention in real fast, and certainly you have actions you need to take care of. So you hear those words and you jump into action for what you've been trained to do.
It's very interesting. You never apparently exhibit fear. You seem to be in charge of yourself. Would that be an apt description?
Very much so. We spend, as a submarine crew, and individually, of course, as well, a lot of time in training, both for emergency situations, but training to know your equipment, to know the people with whom you are working, and to know the processes, not all of yourself, but theirs as well. As a result of that, you come to trust the people with whom you're working, that they're going to do your job, that they're going to do their job, and they know you're going to do your job. So in that environment, you don't need to be afraid, and you don't need to panic and run, but rather you take stock of the situation and you react according to how you've been trained and according to how you think. So you don't need to run around with like a chicken with its head cut off, so to speak, but you can take care of your business.
You are passionate about business processes and an expert in that area as well. Why did you pursue that arena?
That was, I think, heavily influenced by my time in the Navy, in that on submarines, you have to know every system, how it reacts, even if it's not a system associated with your specific job. But you have to know how that system interacts with your system. You have to know how the people in another department interact with the people in your own department. And the failure of that resulted in frankly, in people dying, in systems failing, and so forth. So I took that forward, and granted, in a business world, perhaps the effects of failure are not so dramatic, but they are dramatic in that a failure of a system can cause a company to fail, and fail in a very public and big way. So I like understanding how things work, how people interact, and there's always room for improvement.
Here's what others say about you, Steve. Snyder's ability to assess and develop solutions for large, complex projects makes him invaluable to the business change side of the team. Snyder did a fantastic job of explaining not only what controls and procedures we had in place, but also the processes that we were working on. Do you think that that's an apt description of you?
Oh, very, very much. I take pride in knowing how the business actually works. Every organization has its written procedures, but those procedures often don't take into account how the people actually execute under those procedures. So I like to know what's really going on, and then figuring out, from the human side, how can we improve things. An example of that is when I was a controller of the chemicals trading team, and we moved into the trading arm of BP, and I spent a lot of time working with the support teams to understand our business and how we interrelated. And the result of that was, after the second year, it was noted that I had the best front-to-back integration in the whole organization. And that made me feel very good, because that allowed us to work without a lot of errors and disputes. We got things done, and we got it done right the first time.
You have demonstrated your talents in the global energy industry. Select one accomplishment of which you are particularly proud.
Again, inside this trading organization, we one of the primary purposes is the buying and selling of crude oil. There was one process that we had that was mostly an internal process, but it involved 3 legal entities operating on 2 major accounting platforms, using 5 or 6 different background IT systems to capture deals and process them and so forth. Very labor intensive, and frankly a lot of non-value added steps were involved. But taking a look at that over about 3-4 months period, I got it all put onto one financial system, one legal entity, and I allowed IT to actually move all these 5 or 6 different legacy systems into retirement, and that saved a couple $1 million right there, plus allowing people to be redeployed into more value-adding type activities. So that was a big one for me.
I keep hearing your passion.
Passion is what makes things happen.
I agree with you.
With passion, you're motivated.
There's no question.
Yeah.
It propels you to success. It's your career fuel, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
When you were with BP, formerly known as British Petroleum, you were sent to Egypt. Mm-hmm. You had an array of responsibilities. What was it like to assume the responsibilities of the deputy finance manager, who was also the secretary of the board of directors for the Gulf of Suez Petroleum Company, known as GUPCO?
That was a great experience, actually. Assuming those duties and responsibilities happen fairly frequently, but it was really good. I view my time in Egypt with I have a lot of fond memories of that. Now, a lot of people may not have heard of GUPCO. It's a joint venture between the government of Egypt and BP. It's been around for close to 40 years at this point. But since it is a JV, it really doesn't make the news in and of itself, as each of the partners report everything as their own numbers. But GUPCO would have been a Fortune 500 company in and of itself. Had revenues around $3 billion, return on capital employed of around 45%, which that's a significant number in any company. Board of directors was 3 each from the government and from BP. And what made that secretary of the board job interesting was watching the partners interact. literally the three people from the government and the three people from BP sat across from the table from each other rather than acting as one group. So there were some differences that had some real interesting discussions to resolve. So that was a learning experience, which I've taken into myself in valuing the different cultures that you can run into, and that there's a lot to learn from everybody, and so value everybody.
What about the level of responsibility? Because it was, after all, high level when you had to assume the responsibilities of the deputy finance manager and so on.
Oh, yes, very much. In the finance department, there were 107 employees, two of which were BP. The rest were all employees of the government. And, of course, their job was to keep the government happy, and our job was to be BP's face into this joint venture. Excuse me. With that, as mentioned, the deputy finance manager and myself, we were the financial face of BP into the joint venture, and frankly, we controlled the money. Each disbursement required two signatures, of course. Well, let me tell you a story to demonstrate this. When my replacement came in to BP, the first day there, he says, what's your financial authority here? And I said, it's unlimited. And he just laughed. And he said, yeah, right, Well, 3 days later, he asked me the same question. We had the same short conversation. My last day there, he said, no, really, what's your authority here? And I said, truly, it's unlimited. You are the face of BP. So as long as the documentation is correct, you can sign anything you want. Well, I don't want to rephrase that. You can sign anything that's properly documented.
So that meant that you were in that position. Am I correct? When the deputy finance manager was not available?
Even when he was around, we both had the authority. We both had unlimited financial authority to approve payments, financial transfers, and so forth. We were the financial face into the joint venture.
Amazing.
It's a unique environment.
What is your next career step?
I desire a high-level financial position in a growing and dynamic organization. Now, I mentioned growing and dynamic, and my preference for such an organization is to use my skills and experience to grow the business and to overcome the challenges that come with growth. And I think my skills and experience have made me the right fit for a senior position to lead a business to success.
Do you feel that you must stay in the global energy industry, or are you open to looking at other opportunities and transferring your skills to other industries?
I believe strongly my skills are applicable to pretty much to most industries. Every company, every industry has processes that are in need of refinement, of becoming more effective or more efficient. So in that regard, yes, my skills and experience can be transferred. Staying in the oil and gas arena would be great. I do know that very well. But moving that into manufacturing, construction, healthcare, or even into the financial world, that fits very well. That fits very well, I believe.
Steve, it's been a pleasure interviewing you today. Thank you for joining me. I wish you continued career success.
Well, thank you for this time. It was a pleasure visiting.
To listen live to my ongoing radio show, Win Without Competing, as well as more than 50 podcasts, including interviews of high-profile people, visit drbarrow.com. That's drbarro.com. Click on the title of the show description that interests you. To learn about my book, Win Without Competing, nominated for a Business Book Award, visit winwithoutcompeting.com. To buy the book online, go to Amazon, Borders, and Barnes & Noble. For an overview of all the ways you can learn about my Right Fit method, the subject of my book, visit Dr. Arlene, rightfitmethod.com. Dr. Arlene is spelled out DoctorArlene. Then, directly right after that, with no spaces, rightfitmethod.com. To contact me directly, call 310-441-5305. That's 310-441-5305. Or email drbarro, that's Dr. Barrow, at winwithoutcompeting.com. Thank you for listening to this special edition of Win Without Competing. Goodbye for now, Dr. Arlene.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. Take control with Reputation Defender. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-811-4975 to speak to an expert.